What's up, Explearners? In this video, we are talking about hooks, as in attention grabbers when you are giving a talk, giving a presentation, or a speech. So that's what's in store for you today. So I hope you stay tuned because this is really going to help you with your public speaking skills. Where does the hook belong? The hook comes right in the beginning of your talk. Typically what it looks like for the opener is hook, connector, and preview or roadmap. So that is generally the order of the opener. But today we're focusing on hook because this is really important if you want to hook and intrigue and grab your audience. It is a way of piquing their interest. And so that'll allow them to want to listen to you for the rest of the talk or to stay, because if they're at free will, then they don't have to stay and then you get hecklers. We want, as good public speakers, to be able to retain the audience's attention and to have their focus, because we ultimately want to be able to convey our message to the audience, right? That's the whole point of giving a talk. All right, so we're gonna look at different ways to hook the audience and pique their interest so that you can give a better presentation and leave the audience with something memorable and that food for thought just sitting in their minds, something that will make a lasting impression. The first one is using the word imagine. Visualization can be a super powerful tool. You can start by saying, imagine a time when. Imagine you're in the mountains and you see a beautiful view before you, and then you get into talk about the environment or something. I'll leave that to you to figure out. Another way to hook your audience is to tell a story or an anecdote. Make sure that the anecdote is brief, interesting, compelling, and relevant. If it seems like there's a disconnect between the story you're telling and then the topic of your talk, then it's your job as the speaker to bridge that gap of understanding and to make it clear as to why you're telling this story to the audience. Otherwise, they're gonna scratch their heads and think, well, why should I care about this story about this person? So make sure that it is relevant. Hook type number 3, asking a series of rhetorical questions. When you ask a series of questions, right, so the questions are back to back, maybe in a group of 3, that's usually a good number to go with, 3. You get the audience pondering and they're thinking. And when they're thinking, they're engaged. It becomes more interactive, even if they're not saying anything, right? When we talk about speeches being interactive, it's not that it is interactive in the way that a conversation is interactive, that your interaction is interactive, right? That is different in a talk. When we mean a talk is interactive, the idea is that your audience is doing something. If you have your audience do a task, talk to the person sitting next to them, think about something, that engages them, and that is going to help them focus on your talk. And also, it's gonna make it more memorable for them because they're gonna have more fun with it instead of just sitting there listening to you. Another type of hook is arousing curiosity. And one of the ways to do that is with self-deprecating humor. If this is something that sort of fits in with your personality and your authentic speaking self, then I would suggest you use it. If this does not sound like something you would do, if you're not into self-deprecating humor, then don't use this hook. Right? We always want to be true to ourselves. Start with this. I have a confession. 20 years ago, I did something really crazy, kind of unthinkable, ... I went to law school, right? So before that pause, that ... the audience is on the edge of their seats. They're like, oh, what is it? What is it? They're going to give me a confession. They're going to spill the beans here. And then you add something funny and it's self-deprecating. You're poking fun at yourself. But what that does is hooks the audience. It arouses their curiosity and they want to pay attention. So that's a really fun one to use. Again, if you're into self-deprecating humor. Number 5, use a what if scenario. Ta-da! Okay, so a what if scenario. For example, you start with telling the audience something like, what if you were completely 100% debt-free? And then you segue into talking about financial freedom or financial independence or fiscal responsibility, right? Something that is related to being debt-free, or maybe student loans and why you shouldn't take one out, right? So we go back to the idea of relevance. Make sure that it is relevant to the topic at hand, But why not start with a what if scenario? That also engages the audience, it makes them curious about your talk, and it also forces them to visualize a scenario. Or maybe it reminds them of their own situation. And these what if scenarios as a hook are easily adaptable to any presentation. You can even start off a meeting with a what if. When we say hooks, these are also relevant to smaller communication types, right? Like when you're in a meeting or when you're at a cafe and you're chatting with your friends. So it doesn't always have to be for public speaking, like on stage per se. But of course, hooks really shine in a talk or in a speech. So be sure to use them then. But I'm just saying, if you don't have any occasion to practice a speech, you can try and practicing it on your friends and engage them in a way that you are likely to hook their attention. Number 6, going for a contrarian approach. So taking something, a thought that is widely accepted by the majority of the people or society or culture or whatever, and then taking the opposite approach. Sometimes this can be a little bit controversial, but the reality is that if you have really strong claims to support and back up what you say, your statements, then you can go with this. And perhaps you're trying to persuade your audience. If this is the type of talk that you're giving, then you can try this contrarian approach. My advice to you would not to use anything too controversial. You don't want to alienate your audience. You don't want to exclude people. The idea of good public speaking is that we're as inclusive as possible. And a really important pointer here is to remember that you need to know your audience. You need to figure out who they are. This is true of any time we give a talk to anyone, no matter how big or small the audience. If you're going to use a hook, you want to be mindful of the population that you're speaking to. You want to be mindful of the demographic. You want to be mindful about their socioeconomic background, about their sociocultural background, what language they speak. Any information you have on the audience should be taken into account. And number 7, my last tip for you for making a great hook, you can choose a foreign proverb and share that with the audience. There's an expression in French, which is petit à petit l'oiseau fait son nid, which means little by little the bird makes its nest. And if I'm talking about building a YouTube channel, I might start with that hook. And all of a sudden, people are wondering, they're like, okay, why is she speaking in French? What's going on? I thought I was in an English-speaking talk. But it will start, getting them interested and curious. And of course, you translate the idiom for them. But this is great, especially if you speak another language and you want to share that with your audience. Why not use that as a great hook and a way of piquing the audience's interest to get them involved, engaged, and excited about your talk. All right, Explearners, that's a wrap on this video. I hope you use some of these hooks. And again, if you are not gonna give a talk anytime soon or a presentation, then try to use these hooks when you're in conversation. Maybe you have a great story you want to tell, but you don't know how to start it. Start with a hook. That'll be a great way to see how well the hook is working for you. Okay, so if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe, share this video, and like it. It really means a lot to me when you do. And I hope to see you right back here on Explearning Communication Coaching so that we can get your communication skills better and better. Happy Explearning!